Formula 1 2019 winter testing is done. Done and dusted, it's over. Before we look forward, with just 15 days left till the Melbourne Grand Prix, let's just quickly take a look back. What did we learn from winter testing? In today's video, I'm going to be doing my own little analysis of winter testing, including looking at lap times. Is it really necessary to do so? Not really, but we'll have a little look at that. But more importantly, we'll look at reliability of the cars, how many laps the cars were able to do, a little bit of their long run pace, and the most important thing, where I think the teams are in relation to each other, and almost the running order of the 10 teams. We'll be doing that near the end of the video. So first, we're just going to take a little deep dive into the nitty-gritty stuff of testing, but I will say, what a fun 2 weeks it's been. Formula 1 is back, baby, but 15 days is all we've got to wait. In that time period, we've got a few little goodie bags here, there and everywhere. We've got the new Netflix documentary for last year's season, which is on March the 8th. That should be a lot of fun. And of course, there's going to be tons of stuff pumped out by Formula 1 on their official social media. I'm going to be doing my season previews for each team over the next 2 weeks, so I'm really looking forward to it. The hype train has left the station properly now. We're a few miles down the line and we're almost at the final destination. First of all then, winter testing. My first little graph that I've got here, probably the least useful, but probably one of the most fun to look at, is the fastest times per driver. And it was Sebastian Vettel on the final day that got the fastest time overall with a 1:16.2. Lewis Hamilton just 3 thousandths behind him, also with a 1:16.2, both on the quickest, the softest tyre, the C5, both of those on day 8. But on day 7, Charles Leclerc also got a 1:16.2. Just 7 thousandths away from Lewis Hamilton, so those top 3 looking super duper close. Valtteri Bottas a further 3 tenths behind those top 3 drivers, but Mercedes and Ferrari fighting for those top times, which is exactly what we want going into the season. Behind them was Hulkenberg. He got the 5th fastest time. Then the 2 Toro Rossos in the top 10. Brilliant for those 2. Also the 2 McLarens in the top 10, Sainz and Norris. In between those was Grosjean, who got 9th fastest. And then just outside the top 10, Gasly in 11th. That was the quickest time for Red Bull. They'll be fine with that, I believe. And after limited running on the final 2 days due to Gasly's crash, Gasly also had a crash in week 1. And then as a result of Gasly's crash on day 7, Max Verstappen had limited running because of a gearbox issue on day 8 caused by Gasly's crash. So 11th overall. They'll be fine with that, but Daniel Ricciardo is the final one there I've got up on the charts. He had the 12th fastest time with a 1:17.1. We didn't quite see laps in the 1:15s like we'd hoped, but still some very quick times overall. The fastest laps per team are as follows. Vettel had the fastest lap for Ferrari, Hamilton, Mercedes and Hulkenberg for Renault. Albon just edged out Kvyat on day 7 to get a 1:16.8 to get the fastest lap for Toro Rosso. McLaren's fastest lap was on the final day as well, a 1:16.8 from Sainz. Grosjean got the fastest lap for Haas, a 1:17 flat. Red Bull, that's Gasly's lap we just spoke about, was a 1:17 flat as well. Raikkonen, the fastest lap for Alfa Romeo. Although in the first week they were putting out some really impressive times, the team seemed to fade away in the second week, not putting out anything too flashy, anything in your face. And ultimately they've ended up the week with the 8th fastest time of any team, courtesy of Kimi Raikkonen, a 1:17.2. Racing Point and Lance Stroll on day 7 posted their fastest time with a 1:17.5. And Williams, their quickest lap time, a whole 2 seconds behind the Ferrari and the Mercedes, with a 1:18.1. Wow. How representative is that time? It was on the C5 tyres. Are we expecting them to be 2 seconds away in qualifying? It's not looking great for Williams, and as you'll hear me talk about lots in this sort of review video, if you're watching this, well, as soon as it comes out, you will know, and if you're watching it later, you may have forgotten that Williams didn't take part in the first 2 days at all, and then the third day only showed up for about 16 laps. So 3 full days without testing really hurt them. And yes, we've seen in previous years teams not show up at all, but still, this car, well, needed extra running. It's not looking quick, it's not looking great, and they're really going to have to rely on their two drivers, which I think actually is a really strong pairing. I don't want to say it's the best on the grid, but it's definitely up there, and I'm looking forward to seeing both of them on circuit this season. Moving on then to a little bit more of a, I suppose, nicer, easier look, and we're looking at the fastest times per tyre. Only 4 we're going to be looking at. We're not including the C1 tyres, very limited running. We're also not including the D3 tyres, the Development 3 tyres. They were out and about for whatever reason. Also, we saw a couple of guys go on the intermediate tyres just for a couple of laps. I know Haas did a few of those strange runs just to, well, I suppose save some tyres. But yes, we're looking at the C2s, the fastest lap on the C2. The hardest that we're looking at there was Lewis Hamilton on day 7 with a 1:18 flat. Still quicker than the Williams on the C5. So yes, there you go. C3's fastest lap was Sebastian Vettel on day 8, the final 8, a 1:16.7. I actually think that's the most impressive lap on that entire table there, because on the C4s it was Hamilton once again, he got a 1:16.6, and then on the C5 the quickest tyre was a 1:16.2 from Sebastian Vettel also on the final day. But we're roughly saying that there's about half a second per compound, so the fact that Vettel's time on the C3 is a 1:16.7, assuming that he can go a whole second quicker than that on the C5s, that's a really impressive lap from Sebastian Vettel on the C3. And by no means do I expect these laps to be the quickest these cars are able to do. Still, within testing and within what we've seen so far of this year's regulations, bear in mind at the beginning of testing we were told that these cars were going to be up to 2 seconds slower than last year. That does not seem to be the case whatsoever, which is brilliant news. And supposedly, although at first we're a little bit cautious, the cars are better at following, we're hearing. After 2 weeks of testing, the drivers are saying that actually, yes, it's not too bad actually, and there has been some improvements. Nothing drastic, but there has been. But Ferrari looking pretty good on just that 1 lap pace. Moving on then to my favourite metric, my favourite sort of analytical chart we can look at throughout testing, most laps completed. If you followed my testing sort of analysis over these past couple of weeks, you will know I love looking at the most laps, and I really do think this is the most important thing we can take out of testing, because really, we can't take out too much. We really can't, and I think certain particular journalistic news websites, channels, whatever, I think are reading far too much into testing, because the reality is Williams could show up to Melbourne and prove that they've just been completely sandbagging the whole time. That is an extreme opinion. I don't think that's actually the case, and you'll see my running order after this chart, but bear in mind, take all of this with a pinch of salt, not just from me, but from everything you read from testing. But most laps I always find is a really useful thing to look at, especially on the reliability side of things. But as you can see, there's almost 2 tables here, first with the teams and then the engine suppliers. So most laps of anyone. Mercedes, 1,190 laps, over 200 more laps than Ferrari. A brilliant job from Mercedes, or just under 200 is there, apologies. Renault, 961, just behind Ferrari. They'll be chuffed with that. Had some really difficult days, especially early on in week 2. They will be over the moon that they had the 3rd most laps. Just behind Renault is Toro Rosso. That's a surprise. And just behind them is Alfa Romeo, 922. So all of those guys really close from Ferrari down to Alfa. About 50 laps behind Alfa Romeo is McLaren. That's about half a day's running. I don't think McLaren will be too disappointed with that. Really high up in the most red flags caused by any team. And then the team behind them, the team that did actually get the most red flags of anybody, were Haas, 871, which I think, considering the amount of issues they had, they will be chuffed with that. And considering they're just under 100 laps away from Ferrari, there'll be thumbs up and happy thoughts within camp. Now, surprisingly enough, in the bottom 3, we have Red Bull. They are about 200 laps in front of Racing Point and 300 laps in front of Williams. However, the bottom 3 for Red Bull, a couple of days ago, that would have almost seemed inconceivable, but an awful last 2 days in testing. The 2 days together, the last two, didn't even total 100 laps for the team. That really hurt them at the end. So they are near the bottom there, but overall, reliability seems strong, the car seemed quick, and so again, I don't think they'll be too nervous, as really they're sort of contenders. They're still looking at Mercedes, they're still looking at Ferrari, and I think a team like Haas and Williams, I am going to be more critical because they are in this really tough midfield fight. And this is why Racing Point I've been so disappointed with. 625 laps. Racing Point, very close to Williams' total. They're more close to Williams than they are a Haas, a McLaren, a Toro Rosso. They're the big disappointments. And as you can see, the engine suppliers, Ferrari with the most, then Mercedes, Renault, and then Honda with the least. My running order, the thing that I imagine a lot of people have come here for. Where do I think the teams are? This is the graphic I've thrown out there. I'm not hiding anything because, again, this is all completely relative. And this could change not only by the time we get to Melbourne, because we will see new parts on the car in Melbourne, but also in China, in Bahrain. Even in, well, halfway through the season, this order is not going to be the running order. But at the moment, it's an educated guess, I will say. And many people saying that Ferrari, half a second in front, could be a second in front of Mercedes at certain circuits, but I'm not buying that. I think they're going to be really close. And what I've tried to do on this graph is almost put the colour sort of code on the right-hand side is almost an interchangeable sort of colouring. So what I mean by that is I think at any sort of circuit, if they're within a colour bracket, they could switch. So Mercedes, they could be first, but they could be second. Red Bull, I'll put them as a yellowy sort of colour. I think they're going to be third most of the time. And in my pre-testing predictions, I thought Renault could give them a really good run for their money, but I just think Red Bull have that edge, and the reliability looks strong within that car, so I expect them to be third, sometimes challenging that front pack, sometimes challenging that midfield, and that midfield is very busy this year. That orange sort of band, my God, fourth all the way down to ninth, and again, on their day, anyone in that orange band potentially could fight Red Bull. Williams potentially, on their day, could beat the likes of Toro Rosso, Racing Point, McLaren if they go to a circuit that doesn't suit their car. So it's such an interchangeable list, but Mercedes, Ferrari, Red Bull, they're my top three. Renault, I think over a season are going to have the resources, the manpower, and most importantly, the driver lineup to deliver consistent results, and I think some flashy results with Daniel Ricciardo in the car. So that's why I've put them fourth at the moment. Alfa Romeo, lots of people saying that they're going to be the fourth best out of the blocks, but I still think, again, Haas, I think they might just have the edge over the season. So again, I think it's so interchangeable. I've put Haas in fifth for the moment, but I think Haas and Alfa Romeo across the season are going to be trading places. The same with Renault. It's going to be so close. It really is. Seventh for Racing Point. They were the hardest team to decide for me. Joint with McLaren, those two really difficult to put in the order. Even Toro Rosso, because I don't think any of those teams are going to be ninth. I really don't think they will. But over a season, who's going to have the better car? Toro Rosso looking so similar to previous Red Bulls. McLaren seem to have made massive strides forward over last year's car. And Racing Point, we don't have a clue. Did limited running, a very basic looking car, but we know they can be quick. And we have seen in previous years, even when they don't show up to testing, they can still finish fourth or fifth in the Constructors. And as you can see, dead last, unfortunately, is Williams. But this is such a relative order. I'd love to know your running order in the comments below, but that is it for testing. Just 15 days to go till Oz. There will be previews coming out for every single team, and then, of course, we will be deep into Formula One season and hype territory. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.